We will chill all the guns of the force. Get ready. Airborne from skies of blue. Getting the door. Coming. Make your jumps and take your boats today. Let's go put on your boots. Your jumping boots, your parachute. Your parachutes, get all those gliders ready to attack today. Hook up or we'll be gone.
So here we are back in the historic courthouse of Washington, Arkansas, and we have Bowie number 1. And tell me who you are, and tell me about this knife.
My name is Carey Voss, and I'm the curator of exhibits at Historic Arkansas Museum in Little Rock. And we're here, in this case, we see almost all of the known James Black knives in existence. And here, this big one that I'm pointing at is what's known as Bowie number 1, and on top is what's known as the Cardigan knife. And these two knives are the property of Historic Arkansas Museum in the state of Arkansas, and the rest of these knives belong to a collector who's here with us today. And so, you know, Bowie number 1 is really fascinating because, of course, it's associated with Jim Bowie.
Now that's a knife.
Yeah, right. As Crocodile Dundee said.
Now that's a knife.
That ain't a knife. This is a knife. Excuse my Aussie impression, but so James Black was working here in Washington. He moved here around 1824. He's originally from New Jersey by way of Philadelphia, where he trained as a silver plater. And he comes down here around 1824. And he goes into the blacksmithing business with a local blacksmith, William Shaw. And what we know from source documents is that around the same time, you know, Jim Bowie was also active in the Arklatex. You know, almost everybody, Louisiana, Southern Arkansas, Mexican Texas, they all are connected by the Red River. And Washington was known as the gateway to Texas. And so, you know, we believe that at some point, possibly around 1831, Jim Bowie met James Black, possibly Jim and Reason Bowie, and commissioned a knife from James Black. This may be that knife. This may not be that knife. However, what you'll notice about the shape of this knife is that it's got kind of a strange angle coming off of that handle to the blade. And what's really interesting is that if you hold that knife in your hand and you extend your arm straight out, that the angle of that handle and the blade,
so it ergonomically goes in line.
It creates a perfect line and extension of your arm. So in terms of, you know, form following function, it really makes sense that this is a fighting knife, a weapon. Some of these other knives, the Cardigan knife is meant more as, you know, your kind of daily carry, which at that time in the 1830s, you know, there were tons of people getting off at every steamboat stop, and everyone who was traveling at that time traveled armed. It was a
little bit more interesting back in that day.
Well, you know.
Well, each age has its own interesting, but
yes.
There was a different interesting back in that.
Yes, and there were legitimate threats, there were perceived threats, but almost everyone carried a knife, and some people carried pistols by that time. But guns were still, you know, by and large pretty unpredictable. Misfires, flash in the pan, and so your sure defense was your knife. And this is a heck of a sure defense for sure. Anyway, so over here where Mark Z is at, there's a reproduction of a photograph from approximately 1841 of what's believed to be James Black and his friend Judge Jacob Buzzard. They both lived here in Washington. And by that time, James Black would have been blind, or at least had lost most of his sight. He had a really tragic story, which I'll try to make brief, but you know, he had become extremely successful as a knife maker. But his father-in-law, who he also worked with, William Shaw, was not fond of him. And after James Black's wife died, a couple of years later, William Shaw beat him very badly. There are questions about whether James Black's sight was failing already or if it happened because of his beating.
Aggravated by.
Yeah. But at any rate, he did completely lose his sight, and he was unable to work. His children were taken by his father-in-law back to Texas. He became a pauper, and he lived as a ward of the county here in Washington, Arkansas, until he died in 1872.
Wow.
Would have been extremely long-lived. But he was unquestionably an amazing bladesmith, and these are truly Arkansas treasures.
Well, that is very interesting, and definitely part of American blade culture.
Absolutely.
Well, Carey, thank you so much for educating us and sharing the stories. And as always, have a nice day.
Thank you.
We will, and perish all the guns